All right. Hello, guys. My name is Jader. I am the founder of Black Label Closers, an organization dedicated to help people become effective closers in the art of high ticket sales. Today, we're going to talk about psychology. One of the most important things that you have to talk about in sales in general, especially high ticket, is psychology. Is the psychology of every single player, right? The manager, the sales, the setter, the closer, the client, the prospect, every single person, because everything, it's a human to human um, uh, endeavor, event, process. So everything has to do with the psychology of it, right? So we're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about something that's very, very important to understand. Why do salespeople do not make money, right? Why do you have salespeople not making money? What's the problem? Um, I'm going to ask you to give me a second. My dog wants to get out. Sorry, guys. Otherwise, he's going to drive me nuts. Beautiful golden retriever. Anyway, all right. So let's talk about the reason why people do not make money. And we already have awesome people here. Rose is here. Hi, Jader. Hi, Rose. Great to have you here. Yo is here as well. I'm sure more people are gonna come in as we move along. And all right, perfect. So why do most people? Let's talk about um, the first reason why people do not make money. There are people that are genuinely good at sales, right? They're good at sales, and they have an innate predisposition to make money, to sell, to persuade, to convince people to purchase something, to trade money for a service or a good. And there are people that are really genuinely good, regardless if they have been trained or not. But just being a good salesperson doesn't mean you're gonna be able to make money. Why? Because nothing there's nothing good about being a good salesperson or a person that can persuade others if you don't have a strategy behind what you're doing, right? It is important to understand how the brain works, how the brain or people react to what, at what times can you find reaction, the best reaction, and how to bring the pain out and how to make that pain relevant to the lack of whatever it is that you're selling. And that takes training and practicing and listening to people that have been in the business for a long time or a little bit of or people that have had success in the field. It is important to realize that training, it's something that you have to, especially when you're starting. What happens is after a couple of years that you have done really well, you've trained, you feel I don't so training after a couple of years does not come in the same way that training comes when you're brand new, right? It's not like you have to go and sit in a classroom with a salesperson, a sales professional telling you and giving you all the technicals. Because what happens is every time that you sit in one of those classes, and I'm not saying that basic information, basic training should only be appreciated or understood in the beginning and then you forget, or you already learned it and you never have to be reminded of ever again. That's not what I'm saying. Always the basics are important, and it is important for experienced people to always go back to the basics, especially when sometimes you allow your ego, the better part of your ego, to take over and then you think you're too good for things. So, for instance, what happens is a lot of experienced people start wanting to cheat the system, right? So they get on a call and they think they're so good because they have a smooth process. Now they start cutting corners. And when you start cutting corners, the problem is the brain works in a perfect way. When you do not solidify a point after a significant process that you've taken people through, and you skip that next point just because you think, okay, this person is giving me the right reaction. I don't really need to go over here. I can go over there straight up. Then the brain is going to have a patch where that's going to throw a blank space, right? Empty space inside the brain without the connection, and that's when you lose cells, even though you're experienced. So why does it happen to yeah, it happens to everybody. It happens to, if you start forgetting the basics, like sometimes, for instance, I'll give you an example, a personal example. It happened to me, and it happens, and it still happens if I'm going to get, uh, you know, uh, if I'm transparent with myself, right? Because it's not about accepting it in front of other people; it's accepting it to you, right? So sometimes when I get the person, I have, instead of taking people through the process that I have as a specific strategy to find the money, how much exactly they have, I have one trick that works that helps me understand if they have the money or not, and helps me save a lot of time. The problem with that little trick is that it it doesn't work with everybody. It's not that I can't get through the trick, is that I get through the trick with certain people, and those people skip through the blank spot of the brain where I don't connect because I decided to take a shortcut, and boom, they get me, and they're able to get away with lying to me about money because I did a simple strategy. It works with some people, but it doesn't work with other people. So I need to be careful when I do it and I get lazy. I get on the phone, and then I just want to perform the trick and get, and I probably get away with 60% of the times being able to you know get the trick to work and be effective. But that 40% is going to waste my time. And then wasting 40% of your time with people that you made a mistake with is going to cost you dearly at the end, because not closing a deal that you went for with all your strength is like you being a boxer missing shots that you throw with all your might. Trust me, it is more exhausting to throw a shot, a punch that doesn't land, than throwing one that does. When you land your punch, your strength gets deposited somewhere, and it's the same thing with salespeople, right? When you go through the entire plan and then at the end it doesn't close, you're exhausted. I mean, it happens to me. For instance, I have 3, 4 pitches, and I don't close any of those pitches at the end of the day. I'm going to be exhausted. I'm going to be really, really tired. Like I ran a marathon. I'm going to have, my muscles are going to be, sore, because it's just the way it is. Especially when I'm doing it on the phone, I like to pace back and forth, and that constant pacing. If I'm not closing deals, I'm going to be really, really tired, and mentally, right? Even if I sit down, I typically don't sit down. I like to pace back and forth. I've talked about that before in other videos, how important it is to create motion. And it's not the time to talk about that today, but just want you to keep it in mind. All right, go to the next point, guys. Ooh, next point is not focused. It's kind of like what I just talked about, but let's focus on the subject of not being focused a lot more in depth. Things happen outside our lives. Here's the problem with a lot of salespeople in our industry. in the profession of sales, and I don't know if you guys seen other videos where I talk about the difference between sales professionals, closers, right, and just simply salespeople. And how do people become and handle being a salesperson? Um, Sales professionals treat their profession as a profession, right? Their job as a profession as an opportunity. Think about this: when you are a sales professional, you have a business. You're an entrepreneur. In fact, there's no entrepreneur out there. I don't care from Steve Jobs down to somebody unknown who is not a salesperson. Steve Jobs, most people think of him as a technology guy. The guy didn't freaking invent anything. The guy did not create anything. He had engineers that did everything for him, but he was great at convincing people to do stuff for him and convincing people to buy his products. That's so he was a phenomenal salesperson, right? I'm not taking thunder away from the guy. I think the guy's a genius. What I'm saying is he didn't invent anything. He just had people do, and he forced and pushed people to do things because he knew how to handle people, right? So, sorry if you're a fan, but that's just plain and simple the truth. I mean, the guy was a salesman. He was a closer. He closed to everybody. So what I'm saying is, most sales professionals go through periods of times, and it doesn't really last long. Like, I'm not focused doesn't for a sales professional doesn't last long. It could be an afternoon, it could be a whole day, or something terrible happened a whole week. They come back, they refocus. But it's very common to see salespeople, because the majority of people that are in sales are people that are just camping out, people that are probably they're not good at doing anything else, so they think sales it's an easy job. They hire me, they want to find out if I can make sales. I'll get a base if they pay a base, or sometimes I'm going to make a sale, I'm going to make a commission. And there's a huge amount of people out there just pretending like they are selling things, and they're not. I'd say probably a good 60% of the sales force is packed with people that have no business being in sales. So what happens is, uh, these people do not make sales because they never focus, right? They have difficult lives out there. They probably do not have a house. They got thrown out of their parents' house, or so things happen to these people. And they go off course as far as the focus that they have to have, and they never have any focus. But let's talk about the people that lose focus and why they lose focus. This is an emotional career, right? It's an emotional profession. You have to be convinced of your confidence. You have to be convinced of your effectiveness. You have to be convinced of um, how how confident you are in the process of taking someone from point A to point B. So confidence is everything. So when you have, say, for instance, it's never happened to me, thank God, I knock on wood, but because I have a beautiful wife. But I've seen salespeople where they get, their wife cheated on them, right, on him, and then boom, of course, that destroys anybody, and they lose their focus. I wouldn't blame them, but you can't stay there, right? Now, I'm talking about an example that's extreme. Uh, but let's say somebody who just is going out with a girl, right, or a boy, and they have a fallout and they argue outside in the parking lot before they get dropped off by the boyfriend or the girlfriend, and they come in, and they're just totally not focused. So anything that goes on in the people's lives can affect the way they perform as salespeople. You have to put your problems outside the door. You have to leave them there. I know it's really hard and it's easier said than done, but you gotta understand that this is the way you have to act if you're gonna be in sales. It's an emotional job. You're not in front of a computer. You're not programming a computer. Whatever happens, it's not gonna be reflected in the way. Well, I'd say it probably would, but it's not as it doesn't transpire as obvious as it is in sales. And they get on the phone and they're honoring and they're going to be, probably upset. And that's going to be reflected on the phone or the video call or the person to person, however they're making their sales. And you have to understand how to maintain the focus of what you're doing and take everything outside, become deaf, and become blind to whatever it is that's going on. Right? You have to learn and train yourself to not have any feelings or many feelings that can be brought into the space that you're working. This is your station, right? When you put that headset on or you turn on that conversation with your prospect, everything has to be outside that immediate space, right? You got to be focused. And this is one of the reasons why people don't make any money or don't make money because they stay in drama for too long. Drama is one of the things that drive their lives. And if you have drama in your life, you're going to be fired and hopping from floor to floor, from company to company, right? So you got to make sure you're careful with that. Conformity. This is a big one, and it's really hard to deal with this one, especially when you're training people and you're trying to get people to make money. When you conform, when you're mediocre, nothing outside yourself can teach you how to be different. And so I don't know how to deal with someone who is just not, I make enough money to pay for food, and I'm staying at my friend's house. He charges me $200 a month, you know, for the couch, and that's what's important to understand. Establish your standards, and this is one of the things that I ask people when I interview them for a job. Is I ask them, what is your standard? What's your live standard or your living standard? At first, they don't understand the question, so I have to explain the question to them. I have to tell them, your standard is the lowest level of living, the worst living conditions that you're willing to accept in your life. For example, some people make $1 million at least a year, and they do not see themselves making any less money than that. That's their standard. So they make 10 million, 5 million, but they never made $500,000. They make $1 million. Their standard, because that's where their lives are constituted at, right? That's how they perceive themselves, their family, right? Some people make $100 a month, and that's, I had a guy, probably one guy that I remember. I was interviewing this guy, and I asked him the question, "What's your standard? What's your minimum standard of living?" After I explained what it was, he said, "Not to be homeless." Not to be homeless. I didn't give him the job. I needed someone who wanted to have an expensive car, an expensive house, someone who was hungry enough to be able to go and catch money and make sales. So conformity is one of those things that if you suffer from conformity, my advice, and this, because one thing is knowing this and wanting to stop, because it could be an addiction, right? To be poor, it could be an addiction, right? People that just want to stay there because they do the same things over and over again. But if you're the type of person that you feel uncomfortable at the fact that you are conforming, the one thing that I advise is that you wake up early, you exercise, you listen to people that can give you inspiration, and do that until you have to. until you change. I mean, it's just I don't know what to say to someone that conforms. I've been there. I know it's really hard, but I don't live there. I didn't stay there. Um, sometimes I feel, you know, that I just don't want to keep moving forward, and those are times where you feel depressed, but and we all go through that. It's not just me. It's not a rare case. I can't stay inside a depressive, the depression. I can't stay in there. I can't live in that neighborhood. I have to get out and have to find inspiration. And I typically, you know, I if I don't find the inspiration, I make it. I find it somewhere, right? So conformity is one of those things that I don't know how to help you. That's something that you need to really get out of that. Lack of mindset, which is a little bit like conformity. I'm gonna have to admit. Here's the thing with lack of mindset. So when you're talking to a lot of people, I think I've mentioned this before in other videos. Uh, when you're talking to people, right, and you tell people you're training, for instance, right, and there are some people, whether they're doing poorly or they're brand new or you just want them to do better, you ask them the question, um, how much do you want to make this year? And everyone has to say something that will make them look good in front of their peers, right? Because it is just the way we're constantly looking for approval from other people's approval, right? So if you have a meeting of 10 people or 20 people, whatever, and you ask this question, you go one by one, and everybody's going to give you a number that seems to be aggressive, ambitious, a number that seems to be satisfying for everybody in the room, especially the person asking, if you're the leader, if you're the trainer, if you're the company, the owner of the company. So these people are going to say what you want to hear. Um, and some of them mean it, they just don't understand how to do it, right? So I had a guy, great guy, liked him a lot, good person of guy. He was married, he had a little girl and a wife. I believe he had one little girl, a wife was pregnant. It was very young, he was 23, so they were really young couple. And I hired him because I saw traits in him that I wanted to have. I knew that he was not the aggressive type of guy, but I knew that he was the type of guy who would do what I tell him to do, and I could turn him into a great, potentially great salesperson. He liked sales. So one of the things that I asked him right from the get go, I asked him, I'm just going to make up a name. Kirby. That's the name of a friend of mine back in the day, but that's not the guy. But anyway, I'm going to say Kirby. So Kirby, how much do you want to make this year? And he was like, I want to make $300,000. I was like, okay, $300,000. How are you going to make $300,000? Oh, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to learn from you. I'm going to learn. I'm going to train. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. Blah 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 blah. And he started just saying all the right things and the things that I wanted to hear and things that he thought it was that were the right things to say. Blah 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 blah. Right. And I told him, I said, Kirby, I'm going. I'm going to hold you responsible to your promise to make $300,000. All right. Because what you just said, it's not enough. Now, mind you, this guy came from a background of making only $50,000. And so I asked him, okay, so tell me, when you make $50,000, how do you make $50,000? Well, I wake up and I call. I said, no, but I need you to explain to me exactly how many hours you worked, how many times you trained. And he told me, and I said, okay, so if you're doing this many hours in training, because he was a very disciplined guy, and you're doing all these things, and you're only making $50,000, then there is probably one of two things that is taking place here. One, that you were that you were trained by people who did not understand how to train you or how to sell themselves. So you learn how to sell the wrong way, right? Or two, you just don't have what it takes to sell. And of course, he looked at me and said, Jader, I have what it takes. I promise you. I think I can learn from you, blah, 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 blah. So I took him and I took him from $50,000. He started making six figures, but it wasn't $300,000. Now, for all of you guys that talk about I made six figures, define which part of the six figure, um, what's six figures? Because $100,000 is not the same as $999,000. So there's high six figures, mid six figures, and low six figures. People say six figures like I'm supposed to understand, or everybody's supposed to understand that it's $100,000. Come on, be congruent, right? Logical. So anyway, so he didn't make $300,000. He was making more like $110,000, which was great for him. So I talked to him again. I said, "So what happened to the $300,000? Why are you not averaging? Because he was averaging that money. Why are you not averaging $300,000 like you said?" And he said, "No, Jader, I promise you, I'm committed." So I remember one time I was promoting him to be a closer, right? Because he was kind of a half breed. So I was fully committing him to be a closer. And I said, well, now that you're going to be a full-time closer, you're going to have to be, because he wouldn't take calls after 6 o'clock in the afternoon. He wouldn't take calls, right? So I said, okay, Kirby, do you think the problem why you're not making $350,000 is you're not working after 6:30, 6 o'clock in the afternoon? So I need you to work. There are calls that are coming in, and I need you to work after 6 o'clock. Yeah, but I can't, Jader, because my wife this, my wife that, my wife. He told me his wife had a depressed. She was sick. She was depressed. So she had to be attended for. And honestly, from what I heard, because she was not diagnosed by a professional as someone who was sick of depression or ill, to me, I got to be honest, I thought she was just being a brat. And I told him, I think, listen, man, in order for you to make the kind of money that you told me you make, you're going to have to make commitments you haven't made before. So the reason why I'm telling you this story is this guy wanted to make so much money, but he was not comparable or putting in the work that was required to be able to make $300,000. You cannot be a $50,000 mindset behavioral. You can't have a behavior of $50,000 expecting that somehow you're going to make $500,000. Is not going to happen because it's mathematics, it's numbers, it's math. You put in, you get out what you put in, right? And in this life, I got to be honest with you, you have to make up for whatever is coming negative at you. So think of life as the escalators of a mall coming down, but you're trying to move up to the second floor. You're going to have to be faster than the escalator coming down if you want to make it to the top floor. And that's how life is. Life is a constant escalator moving down, and you have to move up. If you stay still, you're going to be brought down to the bottom floor with the steps, because you're not going to be able. You're not exercising execution. You're not executing to be able to create a different outcome. All right. So, guys, there you go. Some of the reasons, there are more reasons why people don't make money, but these are some of the reasons. If you're gonna think, a lot of people. I've heard one last comment I wanted to make. If you're one of those people that say to yourself and to others, especially the people that are asking you to work a little bit more, I'm not gonna jeopardize my relationship with my kids. I'm a good father, so I'm gonna. What a lame excuse when I hear someone saying that they're not allowed to make more money because, and these are typically people that are really broke, people that they don't even have money for gas, and you ask them to go the extra mile, and they tell you, "Oh, you know what? I'm picking up my daughter on Saturday, and there's my rule. It's like almost like entitlement, right? I'm not gonna jeopardize my time with my daughter because I have to work. And I picture, okay, so what's gonna be your time? How's that time with your daughter? You're gonna be cooped up in some stupid little bedroom, maybe with a mattress on the floor, hanging out with your daughter. Great. I mean, for her, that's going to be great and awesome because, kids are simple, right? But wouldn't it be better if you sacrifice some time and then make some money and take her to, I don't know, to a this and that. I don't know if it's the best place to take your kid, but this and that, or, amusement parks, or, you know, eat some real food and be able to buy her presents and stuff like that. I know that a relationship to a daughter or to a son shouldn't be based on the things you can purchase for them and buy them. But come on, guys. Use your kids and your family as the inspiration to why you make money, not to why you can't make money, guys. It's just simple as that. Just wanted to say that, guys. Again, my name is Jader. I'm the founder of Black Label Closers. We're here to help people become effective in the art of sales, high-ticket sales. You can find us here Tuesday and Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, you can here YouTube, make comments, subscribe, ask questions, guys. Challenge me on whatever it is that you hear me. You don't agree? Give me a challenge. Tell me. Try to be respectful, right? Let's make it amiable and nice, but give me a challenge. You can go to Facebook, Black Label Closers. Also, you can go to my website, www.blacklabel-closers.com. You can go to school, sign up for the free course, ask questions, sign up for the $97 course, which is valued at $1,000, but you only pay $97 because I understand that you need to learn and you want to get your feet wet. But if you want to be a little more aggressive and you want to put your money where your mouth is, then what you do is you sign up for the partnership program, and then we can split 50-50, Black Label and you. All right. Looking forward to talking to you at some point, guys, and see you next Thursday. This Thursday, we're not going to be here. There's a commitment, but Tuesday, I'm going to be here at 7 o'clock, guys. All right. Take care. See you later.